We were thinking today about focusing on the process of transitioning from founders or founder to an institutional law firm. One of the main reasons that we decided to talk about that was mostly because we're identifying that there is late response from many of the founders. What have you seen in the market?
We're living in times of change, as we all know, and at the moment, we're putting together all of our research from Lexington clients across 5 continents on where is this issue, and really the question is what happens next. The starting point must be that law firms have proved more resilient than we thought, and the leaders of the law firms we work with are actually sort of feeling happy to be alive at the moment. But the big question is what happens next? And if I try and explain some of the research we've got already, there's 3 main areas of concern. The first category would be what are the pre-existing challenges that have just accelerated and got worse over the period? And of course, the headlines would be modernization. What does a modern law firm look like and how do we achieve that? Transition, either to the next stage of the law firm's history or from the founders, has proved more challenging, and we can talk in detail about why that is. And thirdly, this issue of underlying growth, which for firms has been put on hold over the last 2 years. So that's the pre-existing challenges. The second category, I think, are the disruptors, because there is a clear understanding from the research we're doing of what got us here won't get us there. We've been doing a number of workshops with different law firms around the world, which is asking groups of partners, before this COVID period, what were they typically spending their time doing and what was important to them as a firm? The second question we ask is, going forward, what do you think you should be spending your time doing as a partner and what should be your priorities? And it's clear that if there was any doubt before, there isn't any doubt going forward that running firms and having your performance around billable hours and financial targets just doesn't work anymore. It's the role of a partner in coaching and mentoring their people, working more closely with clients, and volunteering to do some of the management tasks.
Linked to that, I don't know, Tony, what you think about other leaders engaging partners and lawyers to be clear about the opportunities that Murray's talking about. I mean, at the end of the day, uncertainty might mean to do things differently.
I think the advanced firms are absolutely on top of that. I think they are well aware of the changes that they're having to deal with, and they are adjusting. So, for example, working from home, that was unheard of, generally speaking, 3 or so years ago. Now that's not necessarily universal, but in many places it's the norm. And I think adjusting to that and taking advantage of it, and there's obviously a range of aspects of that. There is premises, maybe you don't need so much. It also gives the lawyers a degree of autonomy, but it does require a degree of perhaps greater supervision, certainly of the younger lawyers. So I think it's a range of challenges that the advanced firms, the firms that are looking forward, have got to grips with. I think for other firms that are more concerned about dealing with today's problems, they haven't perhaps had time to think about it. And I think it's something which should be high on their agenda.
There is always this challenge about the new generations and different ways they're looking to do things. For founders, especially that they're trying to just think about the next generation of leaders. Are they doing what they're supposed to do in order to bring up that new generation and opening doors to do things differently from your perspective?
I think so. I think the key really is to think about the pipeline of talent. You have obviously to do the work today, and you will have your team, whatever the leverage may be, doing today's work, let's assume to the right level. But the leaders need to be looking at who is in that team, identifying who has the talent to progress to next year's work and 2 or 3 years' time work. And I think it's important to think about how you nurture your people so that the talent you spot today is realized in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 5 years' time. And one very simple test rule, if you like, is the 70-20-10 rule. 10% of what you know is from formal training. 20% is from mentoring. 70% is from doing. And I think if firms think in those terms, They can use mentoring and experience to really bring their people along. And in terms of experience, it's not just the law, it's also management issues, managing people, clients, business, risk.
Can I jump in there, which I think is a sort of ancillary point to yours, Tony, which is identifying the kind of the leadership cohort, but also identifying the challenges, which we're going to speak about. So what is it you want leaders for? What's the world going to look like? And some of that's just crystal ball gazing, but there's a question also about what kind, unless you have a clarity around what your objectives as an entity or firm are, it's very hard to put the right people to lead that entity or firm. So I think there's quite a lot around there. I think sort of open back up to the others.
I think on that, having clarity of strategy is very important. So if you know where you're going in 1 year's time, 3 years' time, 5 years' time, while that's not going to necessarily make it all perfect, but I think it is going to give you a degree of clarity as to, as you say, Stuart, where do you need to focus your development efforts?
And picking up on your 70-20-10 side, really important two issues that are unforeseen consequences of COVID. One is on professional development. And we are now seeing actual data that the COVID cohorts of associates are falling behind their peer group in previous years. And that's a really big issue for the firms and for the individuals. And it's for that lack of osmosis, almost mentorship, asking the partner when he or she has a free moment. And the second issue is culture. How could you build, enhance, grow a firm's culture when a lot of the people are simply not there and not making those connections?
And I'd like to be controversial because in a way we're talking about strategy, and I agree with what everyone's saying. For some of the firms we're working with, I think they've taken a step back on strategy because they've felt they've done very well during this difficult period. And in our work as coaches, we help these very senior people work out, once they've climbed their first mountain of being a senior professional, getting to the top of the profession, what is the next mountain they want to climb in terms of their career? And a challenge a law firm put to me just recently is, well, they are the major law firm in their jurisdiction. What is the second mountain that firm want to achieve? And many of the firms we work with that are more modern look at that in terms of the firm perspective, but the majority of law firms is actually on the individual basis. So how do we go about defining what purpose is in the firm, understand the individual motivations of the individual, and what that means in terms of their requirement of each other as partners? Now, in terms of what the strategic opportunity is, I think because of the period we've been through and the way the economy is in all the countries we work, the strategic opportunity is exceptionally clear. The type of work, the type of sectors that will need high-value legal services. The question is really how to get a group of partners to come to a consensus about what they want to achieve in terms of their own personal practice. Because we're still at the stage where, despite this whole COVID period, the law firms we work with find the most simplest things challenging in terms of setting goals, in terms of having appraisals, in terms of fulfilling what they say to each other as partners. Now, if firms can be better at aligning their individual aims with each other and sharing that, I think they're going to be much clearer about what they need to do next. And they're going to be much better at delivering on the accountabilities that they found so hard.
Can I, another point I think, again, coming out of that is clarity, and we've all talked about that, how to achieve it, or at least how to understand the external situation to try and achieve some clarity. Yeah. But I think all of these conversations in law firms should not be conversations in a vacuum, because the other part of the equation is the client. And I think that firms, as you were saying, Tony, the advanced firms are all over this already, but there's a long tail of firms that need to have better processes to engage clients, to understand what it is the client wants in terms of their service delivery, as well as what it is the firm needs to do to increase its efficiency and, in fact, ultimately to be more profitable as a law firm.